and welcome to the CELLS Podcast. And if you're new here, this is a podcast about dating, sex, relationships, self-development, and psychology. And today I am sitting down in front of you guys, and I'm going to be doing a little bit of like a riff on just what's on the top of my mind about dating, about relationships, based on what's been coming up a lot, based on what you guys have been messaging me about, asking me questions about, and yeah, I'm doing something a little bit different today. I may or may not, depending on, all know I am technologically disadvantaged. I may be uploading this on YouTube. I've had a few people ask me here and there, like, would you do YouTube videos again? To be honest, I could not sit and maintain eye contact with someone on a screen for 40 to 60 minutes, or depending how long this will go. But I thought I may as well. I know a few people that have really successful podcasts and they do YouTube and they get like 8 views. So I don't know if it's going to be worth the effort, but I thought I'll try it one time. But I'm not going to lie, I have PTSD from when Neil and I did this back in the day and recorded and put things on YouTube. Some of the comments were, let's just say, they were humbling at minimum. And some of the people were really annoying. Dylan, I still remember you. I still remember your comments from 5 years ago. Fuck you if you're watching. Just kidding, but not really. But yes, so if you happen to come across this and you're on YouTube and you don't know who I am, I have a podcast. It's called CELLS. And before you start at me in the comments, a few things you should know. I'm in my 30s. I'm married. I have children. I have degrees in counseling and behavioral science, life coaching, sexology, and relationship counseling. I work as a therapeutic coach. I work with clients on dating, relationships, self-development, healing trauma, all kinds of things. And prior to doing that, I have I always say 10 years, but I have 12 years in the field of working with clients, working with families, young people, couples, anyone and everyone. So I have worked with people through all walks of life. I worked for non-for-profits. So I've worked with people that have been really struggling, and I have seen any type of person be able to change, be able to self-develop, be able to grow emotional intimacy, be able to have healthier, more satisfying, safer relationships. And I know a lot. So don't comment things, because sometimes when I put videos on my TikTok and I get people commenting being like, what are you, 24 and you don't even know, and I'm like, oh my god, thank you. 24, okay, I'll take that. And I was like, oh well, I'm 31. And he goes, wow, great skincare. Anyways, let us get into it. So if you follow me on Instagram, you may have seen me talking a little bit about why you end up in toxic relationship cycles. When I get questions from people that aren't inquiring to work with me, but are just asking me for support, asking me for advice, one of the top things that I get asked about is, why do I keep getting in these relationships? Why am I so addicted to them? Healthy relationships feel boring, all these kinds of things. And I know that I've talked about this a lot. I know that I have discussed this a lot on this podcast over the years, but I thought I would go into it a little bit today and also just share more thoughts on it, see what comes up. And in regards to dating, how you can stop these cycles from happening, how you can heal this addiction to dating toxic, heal the attraction to dating toxic, the tendency to dating toxic people or avoidant people or narcissistic people or all of the above. Avoidant people, I don't want to put you in the same category as toxic. I work with a lot of avoidant people. It's definitely one of like my most common clientele is avoidant people that are wanting to heal from it. However, to someone that dates an avoidant person, it can feel toxic when they feel that you're abandoning them, you're leaving them in times of tension, when there's emotional intimacy growing. If to someone that is dating an avoidant person, it can feel toxic or manipulative when that person, the avoidant, withdraws when they develop closer emotional intimacy. So at their core, an avoidant person desires and seeks and yearns for emotional intimacy and connection. However, they also fear it at the same time based on things that they experience throughout their childhood, whether that be like inconsistent love, messages around what love looks like, developing belief that love might be associated with pain, conflict, heartbreak, etc. Maybe they experienced manipulation. Maybe they had parents that were really unsupportive or extremely busy and unavailable and weren't there to nurture them emotionally. So, avoidant people as children typically would learn to manage and cope with their emotions very independently and on their own. And those experiences that they experienced throughout their childhood were so big and so significant. And by the way, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have had to have this horrific childhood trauma. You can be avoidant without childhood trauma. But the feelings of, not being seen by your parents, not being validated, acknowledged, or any of those things from your parents where you're like, that felt too big to experience that abandonment. So often you go to instead starting to rationalize and use logic to overcome your problems, to try and problem solve and resolve that tension in your body. Or sometimes you shut down, you withdraw, you dissociate, and you feel numb because that is a protective mechanism to avoid those feelings that you don't want to feel. So avoidance, that is it is something that it's an attachment style that we fall into as a way to protect ourselves. So we still desire love, we still desire connection. Most people inherently want those things in their life. However, when that emotional intimacy is presented to us, it feels scary. It feels uncomfortable. And instead of acknowledging and feeling in your brain, you don't often think things. The avoidant person doesn't often think things like, I feel scared, I feel vulnerable, I feel afraid, this is more than I can handle, I don't know how to express my feelings. No, what usually happens is they might start thinking things like, hey, hang on, actually, this person, maybe they're not for me. Maybe they talk a little bit too loud or too fast, or maybe they're a little bit non committal. Like we start to create in our brains rational explanations for why we should withdraw because our ego is trying to protect us from having to acknowledge that we feel vulnerable and therefore we are withdrawing. So the reason the reason I've got on my a rant on avoidance there is that often when we're talking about toxic people and we're talking about cycles and patterns that we get stuck in dating, people throw avoidance avoidant people into those categories as well. So I want to make that a clear differentiation that I might be referring to toxic people. I might use toxic or avoidant throughout this conversation, but I don't think that uh, avoidant people are inherently toxic. I think that their actions and their desire to retreat to safety leaves the people that they're in partnerships with feeling hurt, feeling abandoned, feeling confused, because often when you withdraw, sometimes it's ghosting, or sometimes it's providing an explanation that makes literally no sense. So then that person interprets it as manipulation or gaslighting or whatever. But that interpretation and that rational reason why you are now leaving them or no longer dating them feels very real to you at that time. Another interesting thing, which you probably heard me say 7,000 times, but avoidant people and anxiously attached people often end up in relationships together. It's like you're drawn to each other because you're on opposite ends of the spectrum. So anxiously attached people can have had very similar upbringings to an avoidant person where love might have felt conditional, it might have felt inconsistent, there might have been elements of emotional neglect or emotional turbulence in your childhood. And instead of this withdrawal and this shutdown and that I'm going to deal with this all on my own, like I don't need people response that an avoidant might have, an anxiously attached person instead really holds on to that deep desire and yearning for typically their parents' approval, validation, acknowledgement, and love. And they're really hanging on to that. So they're hyper attuned, hyper fixated, hyper aware on what they can be doing to achieve their parents' love or things like that, or what they can be saying. Maybe it's through overachievement. And when they sense that their loved one is withdrawing, it brings upon a feeling of huge and significant anxiety within them. Another thing I should say is this might be resonating with you when I'm talking about anxious and avoidant here. And you're like, well, I literally didn't experience any of those things in my childhood. Sometimes we can develop, like, to an extent, we can develop these attachment styles within relationships. It may not be a genuine, true reflection of your attachment style, but they can ignite things in it. Like, for example, I'm happily married. My husband is the most beautiful person, my soulmate, blah, 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 boring. And we are securely attached. However, if my husband started staying out late, didn't respond to me, stopped talking to me as much, didn't want to engage in conversations about our relationship, check in, all these things, whatever, depending on whatever behaviors he is, I might start developing an insecure attachment to him. I might start getting anxious, being like, why isn't he replying? Why hasn't he got back to me? Why isn't he, whatever? Sometimes that can literally develop from adult relationships. However, as a someone that is, I'm very securely attached, I'm very aware of these things, attuned to these things, emotionally intelligent, etc. If he were to say that as a very secure person with also with esteem, and I'm very like self-assured, I would call it out rather than, if this was real life me, I would call it out rather than being like really anxious about it and letting and wondering about it. I would be like, this is the standard I hold to my relationship. What's going on here? Why are you withdrawing? What is happening here? And if that is going to be like a permanent thing, that's no, that's not going to fly. Like, that's not going to land. Like, and you know, I know what I want in a relationship. My friend and I, who, she's actually a psychologist, had this conversation yesterday where we were talking about, like, we're validating our husbands, saying that we're lucky that our husbands are really beautiful people. They're really loving. They're very kind. We were all having this great conversation, and we were talking about when that kind of internal battle that can happen when you're married to someone, you're in a long-term relationship and they're not treating you well. What do you do? And how many people believe, you know, if I've committed to you, if I'm married to you, we work it out no matter what. We work through this. My friend, who is a psychologist, and I, the relationship coach, etc., both have the same standpoint that if we felt consistently disrespected, disregarded, unappreciated, belittled, lied to, or whatever over a consistent amount of time, and there be no actual repair that is occurring within that relationship, then we would leave. And we would leave with confidence and assuredness that that's not meant for us. And I feel like when I would say that, people are like, okay, relationship coach, you just divorced your husband. But yeah, because like this, we have a responsibility in our relationship to meet each other where we're at. We have a responsibility to show up, to have communication that's safe, effective, loving, nurturing. We have a responsibility to embrace and know each other's emotional needs, physical needs, to know how each other needs to be loved. We have a duty to show respect for each other, loyalty for each other. One of my clients I saw a week or two ago um was telling me how someone he knows would say to their partner, like, fuck off, like, slam the door in their face, like, piss off, you piece of shit, or whatever. And just like, my client was kind of like giggling about it a little bit, being like, oh, like, that doesn't happen with me and them, but like, that's what they do with their partner or whatever. And I said, like, I know that to some people that is such normal behavior, so that doesn't seem like a big deal. Many people listening to this will be like, okay, so they told you to fuck off and slam the door, like, whatever. If that happened in my relationship, in my marriage, if my husband said, you're a piece of shit, fuck off and slam the door, he would not be coming back through that door. Like, that, the level of disrespect and hurt in that is so abhorrent. And I'm going on a different tangent here, but maybe this is the this is the road I'm going to start taking this podcast down, because I literally just started recording this and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to talk about, but I'm going to get something in my mind and it'll just come to me as I go. But this is something that I feel really, really passionately for when it comes to the success in dating. And particularly for women. I know that most of my clients are men, most of my listeners are men, but this is something I feel particularly important for women to learn and embody, but also men. And that is when you hold a level of self assuredness and self confidence and self esteem within your relationships, people aren't going to know. People aren't going to push those boundaries. People aren't going to see what they can get away with. People aren't going to disrespect you and treat you poorly because they know that there will be an immediate consequence to it. Some people respond really well. Like I know women typically, disclaimer before you start fighting me in the comments, disclaimer, this is typically women tend to respond more impactfully through emotional output. So if they saw that their partner was in pain, their partner is struggling, their partner was anxious and sad about things that were going on in the relationship, they would have more of a response to kind of, um, get up, get changing, and make repair in that relationship. Men typically, not all men, typically, sometimes they have a response to the emotional output from women. They have a response when they see their partner's crying. They feel bad, they feel really empathetic, but sometimes that change only occurs when they feel the consequence of it, when they feel that boundary actually being asserted. And that's just the way. It's not because one gender is more intelligent, kinder, or anything than the other. It's just what we respond to better typically. So yeah, I do find that, like, my partners, I've said this a million times before, when I was dating, I've dated a lot of people, had a lot of long-term relationships, etc. And I mean long-term for standards when I was in my 20s, etc. But um I people would always know, like, if I tried to get away with that shit with Eliza, that's not gonna fly. Like, she would just leave. So they're not gonna try that stuff with me. Whereas when you compared it to people in my life that were extremely loving and compassionate, which I'm also loving and compassionate and nurturing, but very much like supportive, kind, going above and beyond, like shirt off the back type of people. And the interesting thing about this is that they feel that when someone is struggling, when someone is disrespecting them, if they're very compassionate, if they're very understanding, if they are very forgiving for the sake of their relationship, they feel in their body that that is um a mature response, that that is an emotionally intelligent response, and I'm going to be showing him that I'm kind, that I'm loving, and that I see his flaws, and I'm here to support him through that I can overlook that boundary cross, I can overlook that disrespect for the sake of this relationship because I see you, and it feels like a very loving act. However, when you do that, when you don't uphold your boundaries, when you don't call that shit out and say that's not going to fly, or that's not going to work in this relationship dynamic, when you don't call that out, they're going to do it again. They're going to test that boundaries again, and they know that they can get away with that. And that's why people say, well, they're treating me like shit, but then they say the most beautiful, loving things to repair it afterwards, because they know that all they have to do to repair this, and they don't consciously know this, they may be knowing this on a subconscious level, but they know that all they needed to do to repair that relationship is to instead talk really highly and say, like, you're loving and I don't deserve you, and you're so beautiful, you're so kind, and thank you for supporting me. And that feels genuine, that feels loving, that feels good to receive and good to hear. So then you're stuck in this loop being like, well, why aren't you changing? Like, why isn't this blah blah blah? Also, when I talk about this came into my head as well, when I talk about why men can respond better to consequences in order to elicit change. This is why that book, Why Men Love Bitches, is written, because bitches is basically just women that are self-assured, and they hold their boundaries. They hold their, they know what they want, and they communicate what they want. And they know that when you do these behaviors, that's not going to be okay with me. This came up with a client of mine recently, and this client doesn't like when I talk about them on my podcast, so I'll give a very vague explanation. But it came up in a conversation I had recently where they wanted to call out a behavior in someone that they were dating, and they felt that because it was early dating, by calling it out, it might come across a certain way, it might not feel good. And I was just reminding them, like, you put a boundary in place and the ball's in their court. Like, don't worry if that makes you come across, if you feel that that may make you come across clingy or insecure or nagging or whatever the fear is. They didn't communicate that that was any of their fears. I'm just hypothesizing or whatever. But if you put a boundary in place and they disrespect it, that's not a reflection on you. That is a reflection on them. And you need to test those boundaries and see if they respond to them, respect them. So I was working with my client on like reframing this, being like, don't think that by asking for a need to be met, that makes you in a position of weakness. Like reframe it in a way like, hey, we're dating. Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you showing up for me in this way? Why aren't you XYZ, etc.? So reframe it that way. Like know your worth. Know that you are deserving of those things. Everyone is deserving of respect and love within a relationship. And this is something that, you know, it blows my mind, but it doesn't blow my mind because it's literally my job. I see it all the time, but it still blows my mind how much shit and pain and disrespect we tolerate in our relationships. And I understand this as well because, you know, you all know I'm a recovered people pleaser. And I definitely had a tendency on dating people that I could save and that I could rescue and that I could fix. And they were broken. They had a lot of issues. And I was that, you know, their rock. And I would do literally fucking everything for them and shower them with love and overlook everything until it burned me time and time again. Where if I ever had one mistake or one flaw, all of a sudden that's so problematic. But yet here I have been supporting you for the last 3 years and loving you through you smashing holes in the wall and having fucking meltdowns every day and tantrums and crying and sobbing and being disrespectful, etc. But the one time I call out a behavior or get like angry about it, all of a sudden you're like, no, 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 that's not for me. Like, this is something that your self assuredness isn't going to be pushing people away. It's going to attract people on your wavelength. Since I learned that about myself, especially as I've been getting older and I can like hold my own, in my later years of dating before I met Adrian, I had really positive experience of dating. So it's not like I'm just talking about like this unicorn experience in my marriage where we're like so loving, so respectful, blah, blah, blah. And that's uncommon. It was happening in every relationship in my later stages of my like late 20s before I met Adrian, etc., or my mid to late 20s, because I I could speak my needs. I could speak my boundaries. And if someone wasn't going to respect it, I wasn't going to give them the time of day. And I would only, you know, continue relationships with people that I knew were respectful for me. So I ended up in, you know, some really beautiful, loving relationships back to back because I held that true to myself. So yeah, it saddens me and it shocks me sometimes how much we tolerate, and I understand why. I understand that it's not as simple as, well, I'm just a nice person and I accept people for what they are. This shit runs really, really deep. It's our self-worth wounds, it's our childhood wounds, it's our past relationship traumas, it's the way we think about ourselves, it's our beliefs about love, our beliefs about relationships, our beliefs about what we can achieve. It's our central nervous system seeking what feels safe to us, what feels familiar to us. That stuff, it does run deep. And that is why, guys, when I'm saying this to you and you're hearing this, if you're resonating with this stuff and you know you've got low sense of self-worth, you know you've got low self-esteem, you know you're ending up in cycles of dating people that hurt you emotionally or obviously or physically, then please get support and sort this out because you have the potential to overcome this just as I did. I was, you know, I was never going to be someone in the way I was growing up that would be sitting on a camera right now talking about sex and relationships with people online. Like that would never be me. I was never someone that was going to be very social and outgoing and like had a lot of friends and dating, etc. In my upbringing, the way I grew up, I was chronically anxious and shy. I was so fucking timid. I couldn't order something at a cafe. I couldn't talk to people. Like I had so much anxiety and like my face would go red. I literally could not verbalize a thing. Now, I didn't get psychological support. Maybe it would have. My mum used to give me fucking rescue remedy. If you know, you know, thinking that would fix me. But I was a very bullied kid and a very sad and worried kid, very anxious. And this, when I learned to, you've probably, if you've heard this podcast before and you've listened to me for a while, you would have heard this story. But my turning point was my mum pulled me out of school because I was bullied, and I changed schools. And when I went into my new school, the day I walked in, I said, no one knows me here. So I'm deciding to be popular, and I'm deciding to be funny, and I'm deciding to be outgoing. And that day I stepped into it like I fucking put on a whole different person. And immediately I was popular at that school. Immediately I was funny. Immediately people wanted to hang out with me. And I realized how good it felt to be that way. And that started to feel genuine to me. That started to feel real to me. That started to be like, I am going to be this person. I am going to do that. And this is the personality that has stuck with me for the last, 20 something years since that happened. So, and it's only benefited me. But anyway, my point is that if you've recognized these things in you and you want to change them, and you've been listening to me for 5 years and they're not changed, then you need to get support. And there's literally no better or greater investment than you can do than the investment into yourself. Like, truly and genuinely, this isn't me saying this is a way to market myself. Don't have to see me. I don't care. Like, well, I mean, obviously you should, but get support for it, because you deserve that. You deserve a life where you know how to achieve loving relationships, how to hold your own, how to communicate strongly, effectively, in a way that is non-abrasive and no offensive. I know that my tone of voice, I sound like I'm going on such a hardcore rant. And when I'm like, that shit don't fly with me, and I say that, like, that's not how I actually talk to my husband. When we're in conflict, it's very loving, it's very calm, and it's very gentle but firm and assertive. And it's not like a threatening, like, I'm gonna leave if you if you fucking do this. But it's a like, hey, this stuff hurts, and like, it's not something that I want in this relationship. So how are we moving forward from this? How are we changing this? Like, what's a way that we can both feel good about getting this need met, or whatever, or resolving this, that makes us both feel heard, both feel acknowledged? Like, how do we move through this? That's the way that we communicate. I don't threaten leaving. That's not what holding yourself and holding your boundaries are. It also comes from like an essence. Like, if you have to communicate and convince someone like, hey, I'm fucking strong, I'm gonna leave you if you do this, that's not gonna be felt. It needs to come from within. It's an energetic thing almost. This is literally not at all what I was going to do this podcast on, but I hope it's valuable regardless. But anyways, I had a conversation with a client of mine yesterday, and we were talking about basically, I won't go into details, but obviously, and when I bring up clients, they're aware that they're okay. They've consented to talking about things. If I were to be like, this client came to me for this specific reason, that is consented to. Anyways, so I was talking to a client. We were talking about resolving a conflict that he'd had and was currently in. And we talked about what the hesitation is, what the issues are, like what prevents him. And there was a lot of deeper underlying reasons as to why he was hesitant in repairing this resolution. There were things that were deeper, unrelated to the people that he was in conflict with, but just ran deep for him. And the advice I gave him, because repairing conflict and apologizing felt very foreign, uncomfortable, and vulnerable to him, especially because my client's someone that he likes to win. He likes to achieve. He likes to feel, well, he never said these words, but I've assumed he may like to feel like powerful and strong, and those are values that he holds himself to and that he appreciates in himself. And to apologize didn't feel like strong. It didn't feel like winning. It felt like a dog going with his tail between his legs. First of all, we tried to like reframe, like, I tried to reframe that it is strong to do those things. It is strong to take accountability or to apologize or to repair despite your discomfort, etc. But ultimately, the advice I gave, like, you go and resolve this conflict today, and for the next 30 minutes, you're stepping into a different persona. Like when I did when I was, in school, stepping into a different persona, you are stepping into a persona of someone that is calm, that is ready to resolve, that can express clearly, communicate well. And this is for not only the benefit of the people that you're in conflict with by resolving it, but also for yourself. Because when you enter a relationship, obviously it's easier sometimes to resolve conflicts because we love them and we have romantic feelings for them. Sometimes it's harder though, because often when we're in relationships, particularly long-term relationships, they're the people we feel safest with. They're the people we feel safest to unleash the beast within us and to overreact with, because we feel safe that they're still going to be there for us at the end of the day. We don't fear the consequence. Like if you were to go and tell, your friend these nasty things because you're mad at them, then you might not do that because you fear the social repercussions of that, or you fear that they will gossip or they won't forgive you. But often we feel comfortable being more confrontational with our partners because we feel safest with them. Anyway, so I said, if you can repair here, this is a really great way to practice repairing for relationships when you enter one, because you will constantly need to repair in your relationships. You will constantly need to leave your ego at the door for the sake of your relationship. You'll constantly need to be like, forego that temptation and desire to say, like, well, you have an issue with that, okay, but I did this, I did that, I did this, I have an issue with this. Well, how about the fact that I've picked up the slack in this way? All those things, that doesn't benefit your relationship. It doesn't benefit your relationship to dismiss your partner and say, but I did this and I do this. What does benefit your relationship is to hear, to listen, to acknowledge, to verbalize and say, I see your frustration. I see that you're frustrated about this. That will take someone from a 10 to a 6 immediately. You don't have to step up and apologize, but just by simply acknowledging, I'm sitting here with you, listening and saying, I can see you're frustrated, I can see you're hurt, I see you feel let down by me, will take someone down immediately in a good way. Because when you take them from that 10 to that 7 or to that 6, you're creating a safer environment and a more comfortable environment for you to have these conversations where you can talk about what's going on and what the issue is. So that's why I encourage, like, when you think of the empowered version of yourself, visualize what that looks like. What would they be doing? How would they, what would they be stepping into? Actually, a couple I'm working with, something really interesting that we came up in our sessions as we talked about when it came to conflict. We talk about like protector that comes through. So my client, for him, one of the protectors that comes through is that sometimes he can get angry, and he feels disconnected. He loses empathy. He stops caring about that person when in the midst of conflict. And this person, he's so beautiful. This guy is so lovely. He's a beautiful person. He's a lover. And to him, he's grappling with the, how can I be this, but also just stop caring immediately in conflict. That protector comes through because it's trying to protect him from feeling shame. It's trying to protect him from feeling rejection and hurt. So instead, it shuts his feelings off. And a lot of the time, we feel the most comfortable with emotions like anger and anxiety or overthinking or irritation. So we allow ourselves to feel those things. So we talked about what his protector is, someone that can be numb, dissociative, or angry. And then we talked about what is the ideal protector. And that is someone that views himself and his partner as a family unit. And this new protector is someone that steps up to protect his family, to protect that sacred relationship, to protect the connection between them, regardless of what's going on. So then we talked about, in times of conflict, how do we step into that new protector, the ideal protector? And what comes up through that is, requires a lot of things. It requires communication with our partner. You can say, hey, I want to connect with you. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I might need a minute, but I'm here. I just need a minute. You can ask for space without leaving. You can ask for a minute and ask and say, I still want to connect. I just need a minute to feel calm. We talked about self-regulation, to bring yourself back to baseline, to bring yourself down into a place where you feel safe, where you feel calm enough that you're not going to explode in anger and communicate something hurtful out of spite or out of irritation or out of that anger. We talked about connecting, like physical connection with your partner, whether it be holding hands or just sitting side by side and looking at each other, so that you are remembering like this is something that is being done as a team. Like we're addressing this as a team. And when it came to resolving the conflicts, what I ended up doing is I created like a whole toolkit, because he gets flooded with emotions. I do this for a lot of men, actually. If a woman needed it, I would do it for her too if she wanted it. But they get lost for how to verbalize and what to say. So I create a toolkit that they can save on their phone. So the first thing they do is when they feel overwhelmed, all they have to do is bring out their repair toolkit, and it will take you through the steps: regulate, acknowledge, reapproach, reconnect, repair, apologize, and what to do in each step, as well as what you can say in that moment. And so one of the things that's like, how do you, we talk about acknowledging your partner, we talk about validating their experience, and how do you communicate what went on for you. So it was like, when this, experience happened, this is what happened for me. It wasn't you made me so angry. It was, when this broke, I felt hurt, or I felt like you didn't care for my things, or I felt angry. And the next prompt is, what's going on beneath that is probably that it felt disrespectful, or I felt abandoned, or I felt rejected, or I felt hurt or ashamed, or whatever, speculation. And then it's so that we can get to a place of something positive. That's like the brackets, something positive. Maybe we could, and then positive shared goal. So like maybe we could agree on expressing our needs more clearly, or agree on connecting when we feel tension, or agree on waiting until we feel calmer before we engage in a conversation. Like everything should be posed as a we. This is what we need. And often, when you probably heard me even talk about, when I talk about tough things often in this podcast, and I talk about like avoidance and people that have anxious attachment styles or whatever, and I say, we think like this, we want this. I don't have an anxious attachment style. I don't have an avoidant attachment style, but I say we because I'm speaking as a collective, but because it makes people feel seen. It makes people feel like they're not being attacked, that they're not being called out. So when I'm like, when we feel this anger, when we feel this hurt, when we feel this rejection, sometimes we want to do this. And that's how I've been talking consistently throughout this podcast. That's how I talk often with my clients as well. It's not like it's super intentional, it's psycho trying to like manipulate people. But it's something I do unintentionally, but it makes people, it softens that message just slightly so that it can be received well. It can be lower people's defenses, or maybe not lower them, but not activate their defenses so much where they're not going to hear, because they're like, Eliza's just calling me out right now. Eliza's saying things that are hurtful and triggering, etc. Which happens in the therapeutic process, because so often, pretty much every single day, I'm put in a position where I'm like, okay, I either can support them in this moment, which I mean, obviously I'll support them. I can agree with them in this moment, but if I want them to up level, if I want them to experience that growth, I need to call out something, and I need to challenge them, and I need to show them like, this is actually the way that this needs to be moved through. And what you did was maybe hurtful, inappropriate, or disrespectful, or whatever. Like I have to call it out, because I want my clients to have the best success. I want my clients to heal. I want my clients to live a life where they can feel that they're achieving and receiving the relationships that they want, relationships with themselves and relationships with others. You've heard me talk about this, but I think about this like 4 times a week. This woman who is a dating coach for men, and she works in America, and she charges 15 or 20,000 US dollars to work with her for a few months, like 3 months. And this is so wild. So I came across her because I was like, what's this woman doing? She's making fucking bank doing what I do. Like, what? Tell me what she's doing, because I need to see, like, how can she justify? I would never, it feels extremely unethical to, I would never charge people like that. I mean, I shouldn't say that. Who knows what would happen in 10 years time. No, just kidding. I wouldn't, probably. But I was like, what is she doing that can explain this? Like, what's her study? What's her research? What's the reason? Anyway, there was none of that. No education, whatever. But I started watching videos on the advice that she gives to men that are seeking advice in dating, particularly, and in relationships. Literally exactly the clientele that I see, although I see women too, of course. Um, and I watched some of her like live videos that she would post on Instagram, and she literally is was going so intense on men's pain points, that which is, a great marketing tool. And she was saying, I know you want a relationship that makes you feel masculine, that makes you feel like the man, that makes you feel like you are the true alpha man that you're supposed to be. I know that when your wife or your girlfriend or the people that you're dating are pushing back and putting boundaries in, it doesn't feel right. And you're wondering, is this the relationship for me? Blah, blah, blah. She coaches men and it literally coaches men how to manipulate their wives by being more stern, more aggressive, more forward, to not let their wives communicate what's going on for them. She coaches people in basically picking women that don't have emotional intelligence, so they aren't going to stand up for themselves. They aren't going to back themselves. They aren't going to put boundaries in place. And I just thought, this is so fucking harmful for men to be paying to receive this, thinking they're seeing a professional and getting this messaging. Because first of all, it's not going to work. It simply is not going to work. This is why also I'm doing that course. It's coming up very, very soon, I promise, guys, where creating a course, a cheap downloadable course for single men and how to actually approach, like physically approach, start conversations and initiate like a connection, a spark, a flirtation, or even just a conversation with women. And I've been going through a lot of research for this on why typical dating advice that a lot of you guys engage in isn't working for you, why it's not effective. And that is because it either shames you by saying, if you're not funny enough, if you're not smart enough, if you're not rich enough, if you're not this, you've got everything working against you. So then you have to use these manipulation techniques to get it. You have to do this, this, and this. You have to hit the gym. Like all this shit, it either shames you or it over validates you, like that coach does, being like, no, it's not you. Women are fucking horrible. Women are terrible. It sucks we have to date them, but let's like find a way around it. And that shit's so harmful. And that's why it doesn't work. That's why you spend $800 or whatever on that course only for it to not actually work when it comes to women. And it's like, this is like, don't get me started on Andrew Tate, because people appeal to him because he says, I have a solution for you. Look at all these beautiful women that come onto my podcast. Look at these beautiful women I surround myself with. And I believe you shouldn't have one woman. I believe that a woman that respects you allows you to sleep around, allows you to engage in this, and this, allows you to cheat and flirt with other women, because her role is to support you through this. Like, it's teaching men the most fucking harmful things. The women that surround him, that go onto his podcast, I follow some of them went on his podcast. It's probably been a while since he's had one, but I followed them on TikTok. First of all, they've been paid to go on there and to share his views. Obviously, that's still harmful. Second of all, these women that say, yeah, I agree with Andrew. Let them fuck around. Let a man cheat. As long as he's paying my bills, then I don't care. I'll turn a blind eye. Is that the type of woman you want to be with? Like, genuinely, is that who you think you want to settle down with, who you want to start a family with, who you want to share your life with? Someone that says, I actually give no fucks about you. Just pay me? Like, that is not a relationship. When you have a relationship that is loving and safe and fulfilling, and that you've done your work, they've done their work, and they're showing up for you and you're showing up for them, it is truly the most beautiful and fulfilling thing that you can experience. I don't this is my personal belief. I don't think, it may not apply to everyone. A lot of people, when they're like, what's the purpose of this world? What's the purpose of life? Like, and don't get me started on nihilism. Maybe I think Neil's coming on. Maybe we'll talk about it with him actually. But when for me, the purpose is the relationships that we have. The purpose is the connection, the ability to connect with other beings. The purpose is experiencing that range of emotions and love and fulfillment. Like, that is the purpose. So it makes me sad when people are in relationships that are harmful and shitty. Like, see if you can work it out. See if that can be changed. If you can actually both do a full 180. And I've seen it happen. I've worked with couples where that's happened. It's absolutely possible. But if your partner's not willing to come to the table with that, if your partner's not willing to change, and they want to stay in that space of like disrespecting you and that conflict because they don't want to be held accountable to their actions, why are you with them? Like, why? And I know the reasons why. There's finances, there's kids, there's our self-esteem doesn't believe that we'll do any better, like all these issues and all this trauma and all this stuff that keeps us there. But that's why sometimes you need to do that work at the very least yourself to see, is all that stuff actually valid for me to stay in a relationship like this? Is there a possibility? Is there another universe where I know how to receive love and achieve love and be in love, or be on my own in love with myself and experience that respect and that love and how it should be? So I don't know what I'm going to call this podcast, because it's basically me just fucking rambling for 47 minutes straight. And I hope it doesn't feel too ranty. But yeah, it's so possible. But when you've gone from shitty relationship to shitty relationship, I know that it feels like that's not a possibility, that that's not something that is achievable. And it feels a little bit like fairy tale. It feels a little bit like someone just selling a fake relationship dream to me or whatever. But it is real. Even the couples I'm working with right now are so loving, and they're so in love, and they're so beautiful. They're working with me to work through shit because they want a better relationship. But the foundation of their love and the respect they have for each other is so admirable and so inspiring. One thing I'm working on, actually, before I finish, I think I mentioned this last week, but I'll probably release these in the same week. So one, I have somewhere for the single people and something for the couples in long-term relationships. But one thing I'm working on is like recreating that, a program to recreate that intimacy within your relationship, the emotional intimacy, the eroticism, the safety, the connection, like feeling as close as possible as you can to your partner, like really bringing you together emotionally and physically. And I'm really excited for this one as well. I think it's beautiful. My husband and I are like literally going through all these things as well, like as in going through some of the things in the program, like how does this conversation land? Does this feel like a vulnerable thing to share or do or whatever? Like, I'm talking to other couples about it. I'm talking to my clients about it. Like, I'm really like recreating this on my experiences, my degree in sexology, my degree in relationship counseling, my clients' experiences, and also a shitload of research, like a shitload. So it's gonna be good. You're gonna feel good when you do it, for sure. Anyways, everyone, I love you and leave you there. As always, thank you for your feedback. And by the way, I just discovered like yesterday or the day before that you can leave comments on Spotify. 5 years into doing this podcast, and I did not know that that was a thing. So I went through, and occasionally some of my podcasts have heaps of comments on them I've never seen responded to or applied to. I don't even know if I can reply to them, to be honest. But thank you for leaving them. I've read some of them now, and I really appreciate the requests. I love getting podcast requests as well. I might actually like create like a anonymous like Google forms, or I don't know, like a survey, I don't know, like something somewhere where you can just drop a podcast request in, or drop like when Neil and I used to do those like client, well not client, but like listener deep dives where someone would send in an issue. Like I loved unpacking that stuff. So I want to bring that back. Anyways, thank you everyone for listening, and I'll see you all next week. Maybe this is on YouTube. If it is, the link will be in the bio. If it's not on YouTube, doesn't matter. Maybe this will go up once and never again. Maybe it won't go up at all. Anyways, see you later.